So, my friends, for the purposes of this video, we are going to class the Ruthless Aggression era as 2002 to 2008, and I know now you're hiring, but Simon, what about this day? We have to come up with some rules, and these are the rules that I have decided. That does clock it at around about 6 years, which means there's a bunch of pay-per-views. What happens now if you do go back in time and watch every single one of these events? Well, I tell you absolutely get a mixed bag. So what information should you take away? I'm Simon Miller. Let's go. Number 25, Vengeance 2002 was one hell of a kickoff. So talk about a way to make a first impression, because if Vince was calling to see more ruthless aggression, well, at least some of the roster heard him, including The Rock, Undertaker, and Kurt Angle. This was indeed Vengeance 2002, and if you've never seen this match, you'll be absolutely surprised, because those three guys don't really feel like they gel together, but actually this was one of the best triple threat matches the WWE had put on at the time. Every single individual totally understands what they bring to the table, and they make sure that everybody else gets their shtick in. It's just a super entertaining, fun match with a good finish. You also get a tables bout pitting Bubba Ray and Spike Dudley versus Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, and you get John Cena's pay-per-view debut versus Chris Jericho, so it's got historical context too. Somehow Brock Lesnar is taking on RD for the Intercontinental Championship, and Christian Lance Storm are taking on Edge and Hulk Hogan, so really this does have everything. So it really is an unbelievably fun start to this era, and you do get some story stuff too, mostly Stephanie McMahon, who was the GM of SmackDown, and Eric Bischoff, who was the GM of Raw, going, oh man, one of us needs to sign Triple H. Shawn Michaels also jumps on that ball because he starts winking, nudging that maybe Degeneration X is going to return. And even less bouts like Jamie Noble versus Billy Kidman and Booker T versus Big Show, where they're all right, man. It's the same for Jeff Hardy versus William Regal. So if you want to walk into my house and say, ha, this couldn't have gone any better, I would totally agree with you. Number 24, the old Madison Square Garden is dearly missed. So if you are of a certain age, you probably remember two specific things. The first would be Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Undertaker from SummerSlam 1998, and 10 years on at the Royal Rumble 2008 when John Cena made his surprise return at the Royal Rumble, and that wonderful entranceway that looked about as long as your foot. Now, if you've ever wondered why we returned to Madison Square Garden today, it does not look like this. It's because it got a massive upgrade soon after that, and basically started to look like every single other arena in the world. Now, of course, those behind the scenes at MSG had to do this. You have to move with the times, but it just had such an iconic feel, and so many important moments happened with that small entranceway. When you do see it during the Ruthless Aggression era, you're gonna feel a pang of sadness. I suppose it's nostalgia, but we'll go with sad. It would also take you back to WrestleMania 20, which of course was a huge WrestleMania at the time. And the other positive of this is, of course, Madison Square Garden is sold as a huge arena. So when you knew the WWE was going to get in there and you were going to get a different look too, well, you just shoved your hands together and you created something fresh. I suppose this helps even more when you are a touring brand like World Wrestling Entertainment, because it means when you do get these shows, your eyes go, well, this is nice. It doesn't look like the 42,797 buildings we're usually in. I mean, you could even make the claim that John Cena's surprise return at that Royal Rumble is more impactful because of this, because as soon as you see it, even when you are scrolling through TikTok or whatever, instantly you know what it is. But look, you can't live in the past forever, but when you are going through Ruthless Aggression pay-per-views and you see them head in Madison Square Garden, it does make them more fun, I'm just saying. Number 23, the 2003 commentary feud. So really, when it comes down to your commentators, they should never be feuding with each other, because all it does is take away from the story that your commentators are trying to get over in the ring. We all remember when Michael Cole went bad guy, which was a huge distraction, but actually back at Unforgiven 2003, you also get Al Snow and Jonathan Coachman beating Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, and the stipulation was whoever does win this then goes behind the desk, and if you can believe it, Al and Jonathan actually won. I don't want to be that guy, but I do not remember this. Now, of course, this story point didn't last long, and mostly Al Snow and Jonathan Coachman were going to commentate on Heat. They did actually supplant JR and King on the flagship show. Things get even crazier when you do go through JR's in-ring career, which is something he never wanted to do, because he has 9 matches between 1999 and 2011. There's also rumblings at the start of this that Coach wanted to work matches as well, which he also did, even right back when he was a backstage interviewer in 1999 and 2000. Somehow, during the Ruthless Aggression era, he's always falling into some sort of physical situation too, but hey, when you do watch it, it kind of looks like he's enjoying himself. If you want to know about the rest of Unforgiven 2003, it was indeed headlined by Goldberg beating Triple H to become the world champion, and you have a very nice match between Randy Orton and Shawn Michaels. You also get Kane versus Shane McMahon, which we're going to move on, and if you know, you do know. But I can't believe if you brought up this show to anybody else, they would go, oh yes, that's when Coach and Snow took on JR and King, but it happened. Why the Ruthless Aggression era is so weird. There's a lot of narratives where you look back now, You're like, what the flub? Number 22, the weird main events. Now, of course, people like Triple H, Kurt Angle, and John Cena headlined loads of pay-per-views during the Ruthless Aggression days, and you could also give a nod to Batista, the Undertaker, and Edge. So it's not like WWE didn't have superstars that could fit into the main event role, and more often than not, they did a very good job. Given that this was also the period where we separated Raw and SmackDown, though, I think Vince McMahon was trying many a new thing, especially as we did at the Great American Bash 2004, when the main event is The Undertaker versus the Dudley Boys. And no, that's not a verbal typo, it was the Dead Man taking on Bubba and Devon in a 2-on-1 handicap match. It's also crazy this did go on last, because do you know what else is on this card? JBL versus Eddie Guerrero in a Texas bull rope encounter. You also get Rey Mysterio versus Chavo Guerrero for the Cruiserweight title, and while that was never going to main event, well, the Bubba Ray Devon Taker match was so bizarre, maybe it should have done. Just in case you don't know as well, you can look at the image on screen right now, and yes, this is also the match when Paul Bearer was murdered after the fact. And I'm just going to leave it there because we have talked about it before, but once again, what the hell are we doing? There were other main events throughout this period too, because at Vengeance 2006 it was DX versus the Spirit Squad. Listen, that feud was kind of fun for all the wrong reasons, but just stick it in the middle of the card. Nothing will ever be as bad as the Extreme Elimination Chamber match at December to Dismember in late 2006, which is often voted as the worst WWE match in history. And of course there's Undertaker versus Mark Henry, which is just an odd choice to close out Unforgiven 2007. I mean, they're big stars, but it didn't feel like a main event. Of course, fans just raised a little bit of an eyebrow because they were still paying $50 for some of these. I understand that WWE were trying to get Raw and SmackDown over as separate brands. Maybe they just didn't have the star power to back it up. Number 21, New Year's Revolution was risky. So WWE knew that they needed to be careful with New Year's Revolution in 2005. The show was beamed live from Puerto Rico on the 9th of January, which was only mere weeks before the Royal Rumble that was set to air on the 30th of January. Now, of course, usually when WWE kicks off a brand new year, the first pay-per-view or big event is the Royal Rumble. But clearly Vince McMahon got into this New Year Revolution idea because it did happen 3 times between 2005 and 2007. By 2008, he decided to put it in the trash again, although the last time we saw the name was a house show tour in 2020, which yes, of course, was before the COVID shutdown. Outside of that, Triple H actually brought the moniker back as a subheading for a special edition of SmackDown 2. There was also that Day 1 event in 2022. I mean, that had a different name, but it was the same concept. These days, if you are a brand new fan, I suppose the best comparison is what WWE is trying to do with their Netflix anniversary. But of course, those are part of your subscription. When WWE was trying to sell a pay-per-view before the Royal Rumble, well, let's just say they didn't sell very well because people were saving their cash. Now, the shows themselves aren't actually that bad at all, and you get some super historic moments, particularly when it comes to the Money in the Bank briefcase. But otherwise, it was just an attempt of something that didn't really work. Maybe you could even put the blame on the Royal Rumble. People just love it too much. Number 20, Brock Lesnar only had one bad pay-per-view match. Now, of course, Brock Lesnar didn't last that long in the Ruthless Aggression era because he was going to leave WWE. But you can kind of bookend his appearances, with the first being against Rob Van Dam at Vengeance 2002, the last being against Bill Goldberg at WrestleMania 20, and we all remember that. Now, loads of people will remember his very strange encounter with Hardcore Holly at the Royal Rumble 2004. And actually, if you do go back and watch it now, even though it was a strange match to put together, it's totally fine. You wouldn't even call it bad. I mean, it only goes about 6 minutes, so what can you really do? And while Holly was not a credible challenger for Brock's WWE title, listen, go watch it now, we were plugging a gap. After that RVD match at Vengeance 2002, however, Brock went on to beat The Rock at SummerSlam and have a feud with The Undertaker at Unforgiven and No Mercy. He then has matches with The Big Show at Survivor Series, which is way better than you do remember. And in 2003, he was taking on Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 19. John Cena at Backlash is also good. And then he's going against Kurt again at SummerSlam, Taker at No Mercy, and the now absolutely iconic world title match at No Way Out 2004 when he loses to Eddie Guerrero. So sure, you can kind of raise an eyebrow when you get to the Goldberg match, but even then there are extenuating circumstances. So really, Brock Lesnar turned up in the WWE, he got a massive push, and he proved to everybody, well, maybe they are doing the right thing because he's pretty flipping great. It would have been super interesting to see what would have happened if he did carry on 2004. That didn't happen. So there's no point thinking about it, even more so because this was 20 years ago, and I don't want to travel back in time. Number 19, sometimes 2003 felt like latter-day WCW. Now this could surprise some people because, of course, the WCW invasion angle ended in November 2001, and the company really did fast-forward that thing. It really hurts when you watch it today because Ric Flair joins immediately after all of this, which makes your face palm, and then you jump forward 4 or 5 months, and the NWO debut, so what the flub were we doing? By mid-2002, though, Hulk Hogan was back at the top of the cars as Vince barked about the Ruthless Aggression era on TV when Scott Steiner signed later that year. Goldberg then turns up in April 2003, and of course Kevin Nash and Triple H worked at Bad Blood, so if all of a sudden you want to go, this feels like WCW, you're right, it did, because all the WCW guys were there. Now it wouldn't have been as eye-raising if this had have happened during the invasion angle, but that's the whole point. It's like we hit the play button 2 years too late. You can see that Vince McMahon changes his mind come 2004 as well, because the direction changed greatly. And go back and watch Bad Blood 2003, it really does feel like a WCW pay-per-view from 1999. I mean, Scott Steiner was in the opener versus Test, Booker T wrestled Christian for the Intercontinental title, and Goldberg worked Chris Jericho in a grudge match. Ric Flair then walks down the aisle to face Shawn Michaels, and Eric Bischoff is involved in shenanigans with Steve Austin. So there you go. Tick, tick, tick. I mean, if Ernest the Cat Miller had turned up, you wouldn't have been too surprised. Or actually, WW never did that, and they should have done. Ernest the Cat Miller was great. Number 18, Taboo Tuesday, was kind of ahead of its time. So WWE did debut a brand new pay-per-view in 2004, and the concept was simple. Fans were going to vote online for match types and which wrestlers they wanted to see face one another. That was pretty ingenious, because while the show did not take off and was gone by 2008, even when it went through a redub of Cyber Sunday in 2006, it did show once again that when it comes to brand new technology, WWE was happy to jump in with both feet, and they've kind of always done that. You can't blame them for giving this a go either, because putting control at the fingertips of fans is what most people say they do want. It also meant when you got to these shows, they had a unique flavor. It was basically an interactive event that didn't feel too dissimilar for you playing GM mode in SmackDown vs. Raw, so there is kind of a charm to all this. It's super fun to go back now as well to see what people did decide, such as Randy Orton vs. Ric Flair that did go down inside a steel cage. The joy was it also could have gone down under submission rules or a falls count anywhere, but the fans picked the first one. There's also an amazing story about Shelton Benjamin winning the Intercontinental title, which he only learned seconds before he did walk to the ring with Chris Jericho, because of course nobody knew. Also wasn't the worst idea to get some kind of customer engagement to figure out which direction they should head in, so I quite like this idea. And while it wouldn't work today because of the explosion of social media, it was nice that WWE gave it a go. Number 17, the curious history of the One Night Stand pay-per-view. So of course the WWE produced ECW One Night Stand events in 2005 and 2006 was super popular. We went back to the Hammerstein Ballroom, it was a big salute to a promotion many people loved, it made you feel good in your Tootsie Toes. I think the WWE then got a little bit confused because come 2007, well, they just made it a generic Raw, SmackDown and ECW show instead. And surprise, surprise, that made people sad. I mean, given how awful the ECW brand was being treated by that point, why couldn't we have just kept this going in 2007, 2008, 2009, and even 2010? I mean, once again, nostalgia would have floated away, but it was far better than we got here because it kind of just blended into the pay-per-view calendar and it didn't feel special at all. I mean, come 2009, WWE threw this out anyway, and surprise, surprise, guess what it was replaced with? That's right, Extreme Rules. That was also a watered-down version of the same idea, so let's just face it didn't really work. Now, there were some merit to a couple of these cars, because you do get RVD versus Randy Orton in a stretcher match, and the Hardys versus the world's greatest tag team in a ladder bout. Edge versus Batista in a steel cage come 2007 is also worthwhile. If you jump forward to 2008, you get Batista versus Shawn Michaels, Undertaker versus Edge, and Triple H versus Randy Orton with various gimmicks, which is what they should have done at WrestleMania. So none of these were crap, and we are going back looking with hindsight glasses on. I just kind of feel like One Night Stand should have always meant ECW, because once again, those shows in 2005 and 2006 just ruled. It also kind of started this trend where because you did have a pay-per-view called Extreme Rules, you then had to figure out which match was going to be Extreme Rules, which is what we also did with Hell in a Cell and Elimination Chamber. It's just too much. Number 16, John Cena proves he can work with the great Khali. So sometimes you do just have to give people their flowers. We are about to talk about John Cena. As I am saying these words to you, his career has just come to the end at the tail end of 2025. And of course, he's gone down as one of the best professional wrestlers and sports entertainers of all time. He also had so many damn moments in his 20-plus year career that people are still talking about. But one we should shout about more is the fact he went out there and proved he could have great matches with flipping great Khali. Now, Cena went on to face Khali at both Judgment Day and One Night Stand in 2007. And anybody shouting out, oh, well, that man can't work, needs to go back and check these, because my gosh, he drags this giant kicking and screaming into a very decent bout at Judgment Day, and then a really good Falls Count Anywhere match at One Night Stand. And listen, it was always going to be hard for Khali because he was so massive, but go and see what everybody else on that roster tried to do with him. It did not work. John deserves a medal for his efforts. He basically understood that he was going to have to fight from underneath against somebody that was super huge, and sometimes he would sell it as, well, if I don't do this, I'm going to be killed. It really is amazing to watch right now with other stories that do the rounds. But let's also not forget that John Cena had excellent bouts with Randy Orton, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Michaels, Edge, and many more, so no wonder he went on to become the guy. I mean, he was super duper popular, selling merchandise, and he knew how WWE main events were meant to work. It just kind of made sense. Number 15, December to Dismember was set up to fail. So as aforementioned, WWE had already run one ECW pay-per-view in 2006 with the One Night Stand. It ended with that awesome title change between RVD and John Cena. So when you do compare that to what WWE did at the end of the year with December to Dismember, flub me, that show stood no chance. I'm not trying to be horrible here either, because if you do make it to the big leagues, you've done something right. But I do not think an undercard of Balls Mahoney versus Matt Striker, Daivari versus Tommy Dreamer, or Kevin Thorne and Ariel versus Mike Knox and Kelly Kelly is necessarily worth $50. I mean, this picture of Paul Heyman has often done the rounds during the main event. I don't think you facepalm like that if you're happy. He basically could see firsthand that his constant arguments with Vince McMahon about the brand were going to end all this, which is why shortly after this he did walk away. WWE also gave this pay-per-view zero chance of succeeding going in because it was sandwiched between two main roster shows. You had Survivor Series on the 26th of November, and you had Armageddon on the 17th of December, and this ECW offering went down on the 3rd of December. So who the hell was going to spend their money on that? They didn't draw that big a crowd either, because only 4,800 people did go and sit down to watch it, which was nothing compared to what Raw and SmackDown was doing. The Extreme Elimination Chamber was also an awful sell, because what was the USP? We were going to use weapons, even though the Elimination Chamber was meant to be one big weapon. So it's no surprise that WWE changed tact on ECW after this. And once again, it really did come back to the fact that Vince McMahon wanted to go in the A direction, and Paul Heyman wanted to go in the B direction. But you all know what happened with ECW after this. Let's just say it was not good. Number 14, the Great American Bash is pretty damn bad. So every single time you go and watch a Great American Bash pay-per-view from the Ruthless Aggression period, well, there's always at least one match that makes you go, what the flub? Now let's shout out the good ones first, because in 2004 you get Rey Mysterio versus Chavo Guerrero, which is great. And we've already talked about that JBL Eddie Guerrero bull rope match from the same year. These are good. However, we've also touched upon the 2004 main event that was the Undertaker versus the Dudley Boys. And in 2005 you had a very strange match between Orlando Jordan and Chris Benoit. Then in 2006 you had the Undertaker and Big Show in the Punjabi prison. Let's not forget this was meant to be the Undertaker versus the Great Khali, hence the stipulation match. Then the Khali was pulled and the Big Show was thrown in there, and also none of us could see because it was impossible to see through the Punjabi prison. By 2009, for some reason, WWE also shortened the event's title to just The Bash, but nobody was fooled. We knew what this was. I think mostly if you were an old school fan, it just felt like a stain on a legacy built by Ric Flair and Terry Funk back in 1989, and of course Sting versus Flair in 1990. You even had DDP versus Randy Savage in 1997. Now actually is why we owe a big thanks to NXT, because their branded events of the Great American Bash have been far stronger. But we are talking about the Ruthless Aggression era here. I don't know what happened every single time we got to the Great American Bash, but most of them were not very good. Number 13, Batista versus Randy Orton. So Randy Orton was the first member of Evolution not called Triple H or Ric Flair to get a push, and when that did happen, it kind of felt like Batista was going to have a great career, but maybe he would just settle into the upper mid-card. Instead, the animal exploded in late 2004 and won the Royal Rumble in 2005, before he went on to have some great matches with Triple H and became the World Heavyweight Champion. Big Dave was flipping awesome. I mean, you should go and watch his title defenses against Triple H at Vengeance in June, and even when he does jump to SmackDown, it feels like a big deal. He is flipping Batista. Actually, his program with JBL is pretty good too. Meanwhile, at the same time, Randy Orton's 2004 push had been triggered way too early, and even though he did eventually win the world title, we kind of had to reverse all this because the fans just weren't buying it. It's incredible to look back on, especially going on to know the career Randy Orton would have, but Vince McMahon was just so desperate to get to the end point instead of building the beginning point. It really was the fact that WWE was desperate for a brand new babyface and picked Randy, even though Orton was much better at being a heel. These days, when you do go back through Batista's career though, we do not give it the credit it is due, especially when it comes to the little things like his entrance. I mean, you have super actors like Timothy Chalamet talking about how great that was. Once again, put some respect on Dave Batista's name. It had to be a massive relief too, because 1 year prior, Brock Lesnar had left the company. Now, we essentially had a new Brock Lesnar. I mean, you know what I mean. They did kind of look the same. But Batista has every right to be inducted into the Hall of Fame one day. Really was that damn good. Number 12, the WWE thought about scrapping the Survivor Series. So back in 2010 on a conference call, Vince McMahon had looked at the numbers and he told his meeting, you know what, I think the Survivor Series is obsolete. Now this did indeed leak out to the public and fans went crazy, which meant McMahon had to change his mind. But still, that's how close we were to losing the pay-per-view. If you do go back and watch the 2002 to 2007 versions though, it does kind of make sense. Because even though the Survivor Series was once dubbed the Big Four, it just kind of feels like the company doesn't care. I mean, first and foremost, they got rid of the elimination match concept, which was dumb because that was the whole point, and they introduced a brand new elimination chamber match type, which was good, but also kind of felt a little bit uninspired. It's almost amazing that Vince McMahon did change his mind, because of course he was happy having to bid off the King of the Ring and the Intercontinental title at various points during his tenure. And even when you get to 2007, what are WWE doing in order to try and keep this relevant? A Hell in a Cell bout between Batista and The Undertaker. Now that is awesome, as is a great Edge return, but it was WWE booking this damn thing into the ground and then getting mad that somebody had booked it into the ground. I mean, wonders never cease. Number 11, changing the cage affected Hell in a Cell. So a lot of folks seem to have forgotten this even happened, but WWE did introduce a taller and slimmer looking Hell in a Cell structure at Unforgiven 2006, with the match that saw Triple H and Shawn Michaels take on Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon, and The Big Show. Not gonna lie, I totally forgot that was a thing too. In fact, I kind of feel like it was made up. However, if you do compare and contrast the Simline structure to the older one, which is what we're doing on the screen right now, as you can see, it's night and day. The issue, however, is that the new look seemed a little bit too roomy after the switch. Then post Ruthless Aggression, Hell in a Cell lost all its luster when they turned it into a standalone show in 2009, and as we've already talked about, started forcing some feuds to go into the Hell in a Cell because yes, we had a pay-per-view called Hell in a Cell. It really was a huge error, as was this new cage design, because to kind of sum it up as best as we can, it just looked a little bit too nice, a little bit too shiny, a little bit too pristine, and it did look more like a shrunk down version of Hell in a Cell. That just confused everyone. Now I'm sure from a production angle it looked better for television, especially when WWE were trying to sell in advertising, but that doesn't mean you have to care about that if you're a fan. You want things like cage matches and the Hell in a Cell to be total bloodbaths, which brings us to matches like 2019, Seth Rollins versus Bray Wyatt. But that's a different story for a different day. And no, it wasn't a major problem by any means, because it's all about the work that goes on inside the ring. But it is worth drawing your attention to when you do get into a big retrospective. I mean, the Hell in a Cell and steel cage matches were fine. I don't know why we had to fiddle with them. Number 10, 2008 started an unwanted trend. So No Way Out 2008 saw WWE put on multiple Elimination Chamber bouts for title matches at WrestleMania. This happened shortly after the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, which kind of allowed creative to correct their own booking if need be. Plus in 2010, what did we change the name to? It was the Elimination Chamber. So what we're getting at is a point we've brought up a couple of times during this video, because yes, if you want to pinpoint a show that did start this slow roll towards WWE booking being more about the calendar than actually making sure certain match types fit the feuds, well, it's probably this one. We're on the road to WrestleMania, and Vince McMahon decided well, it's more important to make sure we get all the little bits in place. And how do we do that? We use the Elimination Chamber, so the match became the selling point and not the story. I mean, you can't fault the Chamber bouts at No Way Out 2008, because good grief, they all kill each other. But when you sit down and watch this one, you really can feel like WWE is using it as a corrective tool, or maybe possibly even a crutch the writers could lean on. That also sort of affected the Rumble too, because you could pick somebody to win, knowing that other star down here, well, they can just go on and win it in February. I mean, why should fans get pumped for the Rumble if January, if WWE can just change course in February? And I would argue they're far better at dealing with that today, but back during the Ruthless Aggression era, well, it does shift around a lot. Number 9, The Rock vs. Hogan should have been a one-off. The Rock vs. Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18 is still held up as one of the finest WWE spectacles ever. I mean, you can get into whether it was technically good, but who cares about that? That's not what wrestling is about. It's about noise and how it made you feel, and this one is all time. What most people do not talk about, though, which kind of ties into our entry here, is their rematch at No Way Out 2003. Now, of course, this wasn't a patch on the WrestleMania 18 original because it couldn't be, and by this point, Hulk Hogan was the babyface, and The Rock was most definitely a heel. Now, it was perfectly fine, and the fans get into it, but once again, WWE overthought this, because you even have Sylvain Grenier as the special guest referee, and yes, he was a bad guy. I mean, you can figure it out. This was mostly done because a year had passed and WWE wanted to cash in on something that was so easy. So sure, it is fun to go back and watch it now, but of course there's always the argument that if you just do a one and done and you have something like WrestleMania 18, well, it kind of makes it feel more special. I certainly live in a lane that if you want to do that, just ignore No Way Out 2003. As long as nobody brings it up, you can forget about it. Of course, if a new fan came up to you today and said, I want to see that Rock versus Hogan match, you would go to Mania 18. And if they asked if they tussled again, you'd be like, yeah, maybe, but really, who even cares? Number 8, Vince versus Stephanie is still pretty damn awkward. So one of the criticisms WWE had was during the Ruthless Aggression era was that they should leave the McMahon stuff behind. Now that had been very successful during the Attitude era, but the audience wanted something new, and instead you got to No Mercy 2003, and Vince McMahon and Stephanie McMahon did a flipping proper match. It was also an I Quit Loser Gets Fired, and if you haven't seen this, believe you me, you do not want to. Because this 10-minute brawl saw Vince choke out his own flesh and blood with a steel pipe. There really is nothing to enjoy here either, because it's so brutal it gets a bit awkward, and you have Linda McMahon at ringside selling concern as her husband chokes the life out of their daughter. I don't think these words should be able to be said out loud. You also get the criticism that after the success of Batista, Brock Lesnar, John Cena, and Randy Orton, WWE should focus on building even more stars, and instead you get this on a match on a pay-per-view. Like I say, unless you want to see something that will make you cringe, you do not need to watch this. Now why they did do it, hey ho, we can't change history. Number 7, the UK only pay-per-views had to go. So I went to every single one of these. Some were called Insurrection and some were called Rebellion, and they weren't very good. I mean, they were fun because you got to go down and see some stars, but they never tied into storylines, and WWE wouldn't even reference them on television. The last one of these went down in 2003, and it was called Insurrection. And believe you me, that one was not good because I was there. Now, once again, you did get some stars in the sense that Christian versus Booker T was going for the Intercontinental title, and you got Triple H versus Kevin Nash in a street fight, but you also got Goldust versus Rico. Now, I think the reason I look back on these with so much disdain is because once they did go away, what did WWE start doing from 2004 onwards? Raw and SmackDown were going to be live for the United Kingdom. Believe you me, that was the most exciting thing ever. I mean, we didn't get another proper PLE until Clash of the Castle in 2022, but then we got Money in the Bank 2023, so I am going to focus on the present. It just makes me laugh now because I can talk to some of my American friends about Insurrection Rebellion, and they look at me like I do have two heads. But again, I was there. I saw these. They sucked. Number 6, going stadium crazy, save WrestleMania. Now, once again, if you're a brand new fan and you go back and watch an old WrestleMania, you will see it in a normal arena and be like, where the flub is the open-top stadium? Well, they weren't doing it. Now, it all goes back to Vince McMahon reportedly being unhappy with WrestleMania 19 in 2003, and he blamed Seattle for it because he felt like they didn't get a good atmosphere because, of course, yes, it was in a big old building. By the time WrestleMania 20 rolled around, though, they did go back to Madison Square Garden for this very reason, and it did make sense at the time, but there is no denying that neither the Staples Center for WrestleMania 21 or the All-State Arena for WrestleMania 22 was able to grab hold of this same madness. Ford Field and the Citrus Bowl for 23 and 24 respectively made WrestleMania feel big time again, and ever since then, if you can believe it, WWE has never wavered from this. So in short, the Ruthless Aggression era did see the last WrestleManias in an arena, and actually, it does kind of make it feel small time. I wasn't necessarily a huge fan when they did go to these big stadiums, because when you are in a tighter place, the noise is better, but when you see thousands of people going mad for WrestleMania, well, that's just cool. WWE just seemed to have more faith in their own abilities from 2007 onwards, and aside from WrestleMania 36, which we do not need to talk about, they never look back. I mean, imagine they all of a sudden did go to an indoor building for a WrestleMania, people would go nuts. I actually would hazard a guess they're never going to do that again. Number 5, 1 Royal Rumble per night is enough. Now, I have said this time and time again, and it goes to the Elimination Chamber too. I kind of think that every single year you should look at the stories and decide, do we need a men's Royal Rumble and do we need a women's Royal Rumble, and just pick one. At the same time, do I really care? No. I love the Royal Rumble so much, I will sit down and take. But when you do go back and watch all the Royal Rumbles between 2003 and 2008, one of the huge positives is you could do one idea there and it feels way bigger because you don't then have to redo it later on in the night. There's only so many things you can do in a flipping Royal Rumble. It also actually means you can run more matches as well, especially with world titles on the line. And that's one of the things that the old Royal Rumbles do have. You could have a mega world title match and totally believe that maybe that championship was going to change hands. Now, obviously, WWE was struggling to present a women's division before 2018, and that's why it's actually far more important to have that women's Royal Rumble. But ultimately, it comes down to less is more. Once again, I'm not saying to get rid of either one of these Royal Rumbles. You should just pick and choose. But once again, I kind of understand the counterpoint too. It just feels like you can put more importance when you only have one, and that makes all the sense in the world. Number 4, Dick Jim brand exclusive pay-per-views was smart. Now, I never liked it when Raw got its own pay-per-view and SmackDown got its own pay-per-view, because when you sat down to see how many events were in the calendar for a certain year, you were like, flub me sideways, this is ridiculous. By 2003 though, Bad Blood in June started the role of Raw and SmackDown exclusives, and of course the only exceptions to that were the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam and Survivor Series. This format then continued all the way to No Way Out 2007, which was of course the final single branded pay-per-view of the Ruthless Aggression era. It really is the right choice because far too many of those single brand shows had pitiful undercards because once again WWE didn't have the stars and they didn't have the roster. If you want to describe many of them as special episodes of Raw or SmackDown, I agree with you, and you were asking people to pay $50. Now, it did actually help those big four because all of a sudden everybody was on the same show, so that felt exciting. You don't want to have to slog through things just to get to that. You want every single month to be pretty flipping good. By the time we did get to Backlash 2007 as well, fans were super excited because you were having the entirety of the roster on that show. Just felt like a bigger deal. I mean, even just having all 3 logos on the poster made people smile because you were paying money for these. Shouldn't have to suffer. Number 3, the bespoke sets need a comeback. So you can go on any WWE message board right now and something people will say is, when it comes to the big events, we need bespoke and unique sets. And of course, WWE often does this for WrestleMania, but back during the Ruthless Aggression era, it feels like every single pay-per-view has its own set, and yeah, it works, it gets your eyes excited, and your eyes are the first thing that take note. Now really, WWE has watered these down because they want to be a bit Disney, meaning whether you go to any kind of show, you understand what you are going to get. When you do first walk into an arena and go, oh my gosh, this feels totally different, that gets you excited in your tum-tum. I mean, what do people love to talk about when it comes to WrestleMania? What the flub is the set gonna look like? And even people in WWE WWE 2K25's creation suite to prove that you can do this. And listen, it's not going to happen because it does cost money, and also WWE would rather ram the buildings and a big old set takes away some seats, but I think it's a cool thing that we do miss, and when you do go through the Ruthless Aggression pay-per-views, well, it just makes it even worse. Number 2, women got just 2 matches over 10 minutes. So we've already talked about the fact that before 2018, WWE was not booking the women's division very well, and go and listen to some of the stories, particularly from the Divas era. They were told by producers, you're not even allowed to punch other women in the face, because that's what the men do. It's the most redundant sentence I've ever heard in my life. Incredibly though, between Vengeance 2002 and the Great American Bash 2008, women only worked matches longer than 10 minutes, twice on pay-per-view. I mean, that is ridiculous. The first is a bra and panties gauntlet that saw Ashley Mazzaro beat Tori Wilson, Victoria Maria, and Candice Michelle at New Year's Revolution 2006, and yes, that goes 11 minutes and 1 second. Meanwhile, Trish Stratus vs. Lita at Unforgiven 2006 goes 11 minutes 35 seconds. The closest in terms of times to those were Jazz vs. Trish at Insurrection 2003 that goes 9 minutes 49 seconds, and a Diva Talent Invitational at No Way Out 2007 that goes 9 minutes and 40 seconds. Beth Phoenix vs. Melina at One Night Stand 2008 that gets 9 minutes 14, and Melina vs. Mickie James at Backlash 2007 gets 9 minutes 2. So what that tells us is that an awful lot of women's bouts on pay-per-views during this era went less than 4 minutes. What the flub can you do in 4 minutes? And there were often cards where you didn't get one at all. So thank goodness WWE has changed these times. This goes back to my Royal Rumble debate. I would much rather have 47 Royal Rumbles on one show than not go back to this. It was dumb, it was stupid, and it was short-sighted. Let's move forward. Number 1, the era lasted a little too long. So the earliest knockings of Ruthless Aggression saw WWE persist with Attitude Era flavor, while simultaneously building fresher stars like Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Batista, and Randy Orton. Then once those names were established, it became clear that the company then needed to embrace something new and get rid of the Attitude Era together. Let's just say that Vince McMahon had a real tough time figuring out how to do that, because he was correctly caught halfway between both of these periods, and that meant come 2006 and 2007, WWE starts to feel pretty damn stale, and it was a year before they would change to PG. You can also feel it in the stands as well, because a new generation of younger fans had started to emerge, and they all wanted something a little bit different to the norm. And that might sound like heresy to some, especially if you were brought up on the Ruthless Aggression era, but given that the Attitude Era was only in effect between 1997 and 2002, and this one went from 2002 to 2008, oh yeah, it was just a little bit too long. I mean, if you can't do the math, that is 6 years compared to 5, and while that doesn't sound like a massive difference, when you do watch it, it is. Also, everybody talks about the Attitude Era, and less people talk about the Ruthless Aggression era. Just kind of felt like WWE should have embraced new ideas, and they didn't. Know of anything else that went down during these Ruthless Aggression pay-per-views that you want to talk about? Well, make sure you drop a comment below before you like the video, share the video, and subscribe. You can also click the video on the screen to get even more information about this in your life. But otherwise, my friends, I appreciate you. I'll talk to you again soon.